Great take here from Prenton.
Stuttering start, but they're ending the season with momentum. Manchester City, Continental Cup winners 2022.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of MCW Fancast. I'm Emma, thanks for listening. Last week the Blues travelled to Prenton Park to take on Liverpool in the Women's Super League. It was a tough test away from home, but the team were determined to secure 3 points in their season campaign. Unfortunately, they suffered a disappointing defeat, which they'll have to carry into their next fixture, the Manchester Derby. However, it's not all doom and gloom, as the derby provides the perfect opportunity for the team to get some good preparation behind them, as our opponents Manchester United will be heading into the game off the back of their FA Cup final defeat against Chelsea. But enough about recent results, let's get into the latest news from around the club. We're thrilled to have Dave and Paul with us back on the podcast this week, as we also discuss the appointment of Nils Nielsen as Director of Women's Football. It's an exciting time for the club and we cannot wait to see what the future holds. So sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. This is MCW Fancast. Dave, Paul, thanks for joining me. Paul, how you doing?
I'm good. Slightly disappointed by the result of the weekend, but other than that, I'm good.
Yeah, Dave, you okay?
Yeah, same really. Me and Paul were both on the coach last Sunday, so we experienced it together. It wasn't the best, but other than that, yeah, I'm fine.
Good. Let's get straight into it. Obviously, as you say, disappointing result away from home at the weekend against Liverpool. Dave, we'll start with you. Tough day at the office.
Yeah, it really was, Emma. It was, as you say, very disappointing. I think we accepted before, a few weeks ago, for us to keep our challenge up for this top three. We needed to win every game. We did that in the 2 home games. Then we went to Liverpool knowing, yet again, another must win. And unfortunately, we just weren't at it on the day. A lot's been said. A lot of people there will have witnessed some very, very strange refereeing decisions went on the day, but that's not an excuse to, I think, if we're being honest, the better team on the day won. Liverpool played well. They were organised and resolute. And City just seemed a little bit disjointed at times, a little bit lacking of ideas, and had a real off day, and as you say, a real bad day at the office for us.
Yeah, and Paul, you were at the game as well. I mean, it's really hard to pinpoint one particular thing. I just think it was a genuinely really disappointing, poor performance from the team on the day.
Yeah, it was very disjointed, as Dave says. It almost felt like going back to the start of the season when they weren't quite gelled, and up until this point, they've done really well in gelling. But I think it's probably showed that we're 1 or 2 players still short of, be a challenge for the title next season. So with the new director of football coming in and promising some new signings and making sure that we keep the players that we've got that we want to keep, that's going to be really important. I felt there was a couple of things that were really off on the day. The away fans, the City fans, were at one end of the ground. We were actually segregated for this one. It was an away end, so we were able to see in the first half them playing out from the back, and it seemed that they were very disjointed playing out from the back, and that was collectively. But the first goal was a shocker. It was a really bad ball out. It was badly controlled. We gave a silly goal away, and we were really quite disjointed at the back. I felt playing it out, which we normally very good at.
Yeah.
And we didn't seem to be playing through Hasegawa as we normally do. She seemed on the periphery of the game to me all the way through, and the midfield just didn't seem to get a grip of quite a strong press from a decent Liverpool side, a well-organised Liverpool side. So let's take nothing away from Liverpool. They played well, they pressed well, they worked hard, and they looked, more at it than we did. But I thought the decision-making at times wasn't quite there. Normally we're very good at making decisions, moving the ball out wide, keeping the ball tight in midfield. We kept running into trouble, and it just seemed that it was a collective malaise on the day. And if we play like that in the derby, we'll get a hammering. But, and here's the caveat, I don't expect them to play like that in the derby. They'll have been on the training pitch, they'll have worked out what went wrong, and I'm confident when we go at the derby, we'll see a proper City performance. We didn't get one at the weekend, but I don't think that'll happen again.
Yeah, well, certainly we need to see an improvement. I think, in terms of possession, I think we had a lot of the ball again, 67, I think, in terms of possession, passing accuracy, 80%. But the shots on targets, the opportunities on goal, it just wasn't there. It just wasn't there. I mean, we've seen how creative this side can be in terms of goals created, but the finishing, it just wasn't there. I mean, they certainly tried towards the end of the game. We had our fair share. I mean, I think we hit the woodwork. We were just a little bit unlucky at times. Like you said, sloppy mistakes leading to the goals. Obviously, Hempo, we were able to draw level a little bit later on in that first half, which gave us a little bit of glimmering hope. And I think we did see a bit of an improvement in the team and in the performance. But once Liverpool got that second goal, like you said, Liverpool were resolute and they did everything they could to stifle the game. And Dave, is that sort of how it felt to you?
Yeah, that's pretty much a good summing up of it. I mean, I am a fan of Matt Baird as a manager, and they've certainly done their own work, and the press and their work and the way they stuck at each individual job, I thought was very impressive. And Liverpool have improved this season. There's no two ways about that, and they played well and they deserve the win. It's interesting you mentioned the stats there. I mean, we did have a lot of possession, but it wasn't really in any areas that hurt them.
Yeah.
And you can have all the possession in the world, but if you don't use it well and create chances, and then when we got up front, we seemed a little bit panicky and we're snatching, especially late on when we were really pushing to try and get an equaliser. We could argue, my personal viewpoint is that since we've lost Kira, the best in the world in her position, this season we've seen a growing reliance on Alexandri to bring the ball out from the back. She's been excellent at it. We've used her a lot. The fact that she's now been out for the last few games, I think we've really missed her. We've missed her influence on the team. We've missed the way that she gets the whole. She brings the ball out herself, but she also brings the whole defence up a bit with her when she comes out. And I think that was severely lacking on Sunday. So there's a specific reason we could point at. But as Paul said before, the whole team were just not clicking. Now this happens. Obviously, this happens in football. We get bad performances, and unfortunately for us, it's come at a really important time. So it's not the end of the world, but it was very, very disappointing on the day. And going forward, we need to eradicate these sort of performances. At the start of the season, it was similar. Maybe it was a bit more of an excuse that the team was a lot newer then and didn't know each other. And it just came out of the blue on Sunday. I was expecting us to go there and really put a shift in and a performance, and it's just disappointing that we didn't. So, but that's, in my opinion, maybe the Alexandria thing is one of the reasons, but it's not the full reason. And we move forward, and as Paul says, I think hopefully we will see an improvement for the derby.
Yeah, I mean, these last two games now, Paul, obviously we're looking to get the 4 points on offer, the 6 points as United and Everton on the final game of the season. How do you look at the season now if you were to reflect on obviously this loss and the impact that it has in terms of the position in the table?
Well, let's not hit the panic button, I think is the message. We've had since the start of the season when we lost 2 games, one to Villa where we were just utterly disjointed because it was basically 11 strangers trying to play football. And then, unluckily, we then played Chelsea in the second game of the season, which is the last team you want to be playing when you try to settle a team down. So, for me, I was hoping for top 3. I think it's going to be touch and go now, whether it's us or Arsenal. But I think, given where we were at the start of the season, given that we lost 3, and we keep saying it, we lost 3 world-class players in the close season, and we brought in a lot of new players, I think there's a lot to be positive about this season. We would expect to be top 3, top 4. Let's be honest, the standing in the league has shot up over the last couple of seasons. It used to be top 3. Now, top 3 with us, Arsenal, Chelsea. Take any one of those 3, they'll be winning the titles and winning the cups. United are now added to that, so it's now a top 4. So the fact that we're in the top 4 is where we should be. We've now got to be aware that Villa are really a force to be reckoned with now, and will get better. They'll recruit in the summer. We went to Liverpool, which we would normally expect to win relatively easily. They did a number on us. it's really like becoming like the Premier League now, the WSL, in the sense that any team can beat any team on the day. So I think we've made significant progress. I like the way we play football now, but as Dave says, we've got to start thinking about how do we eradicate these sort of one-off poor performances. We've got to be consistent now, because you lose 1 or 2 games in this league now, like the top of the Premier League, and you're out the title race, and that we can't afford it any longer. So we've got a new director of football. He's promising us, to look at what's out there. He wants another goal scorer to go with Bunny, because if Bunny gets injured, we're in trouble. Because
well, we said this at the start of the season.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always really surprising why, in essence, we obviously lost Jess Park, out on loan.
Well, now she's coming back. Don't forget, we've got Mary Fowler, one of the best young players in the world, coming through. She'll be pushing for first team regular spot. Jess is hopefully coming back. We've then got 4 world-class players up front, with Mary Fowler, who I think is potentially world-class. Yeah. So there's a lot to be positive about. But I think if we don't get in the Champions League, it's not the end of the world. It gives us an opportunity to focus on the league, get ourselves, get the new players settled in, and, hopefully go for a real title push. Because, we were in the title race until Sunday. And if you'd said that before Christmas, we'd have took that all day long.
I mean, Dave, we are a club that should be playing, for me, Champions League football. Are you in a position now where, you're looking at that and you're thinking, well, actually, yeah, at this point, I would take that actually a season out of that competition, and given the opportunity to allow us to focus on working on that consistency?
Well, yeah, obviously you want to finish top 3 and get Champions League, but if not better, and win the league. But if you look back over the last few years, each of the major teams, Chelsea, Arsenal, ourselves, have had these what I call transitional seasons. Remember, there was a season Chelsea were well off the pace, the year that Arsenal won the league, and it was us and Arsenal that were top 2, and Arsenal have done that themselves. And as Paul said there as well, now you've got United in the mix. Unfortunately, it doesn't guarantee the top 3 having it all their own way anymore, which is a good thing for football. It's a good thing for the league. You've got Villa improving. Liverpool played so well against us the week before. Leicester beat them 4-0. So the league is getting competitive, as Paul says, and for the good of the game, that is good. You want a competitive league. The Premier League, the men's Premier League, is the best in the world for that sort of thing. And the WSL, hopefully, in time, will go the same way, where the bottom team could, on the day, beat the top team. That is what you want. From our point of view, as Paul said, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world if we don't. There are some positives because of the hectic start we had last season, this season now that we're in at the start, straight after the Euros, no pre-season, straight into the WSL, and playing European qualifiers, a couple of weeks after the Euros finished. Yeah. That'll happen again next season. At the end of the World Cup, some players will come back and will be involved, which some clubs will be involved in those European Champions League playoffs almost immediately again. And it's not ideal when you've got a new team with a lot of new players. And I'm sure other teams will back that up. It's not just a City issue, it's an issue across the board. I don't like the setup that the Champions League employs in the women's game. I don't think it's right. I certainly don't think it's right that teams like Real Madrid and City are meeting each other in playoffs for a start. Arsenal could find themselves in that situation, for instance, if they finish 3rd. But you want to be in there. It's the major, it's the premier competition of women's football in Europe. You want to be in it. Maybe there's an argument there could be a Europa League style secondary competition like there is in men's in time. I'm sure they might look at that. But we'll see. That's something for the future. But it's disappointing. It is. But as Paul said, it's not the end of the world. It's not the time to press panic. Well, I'm sure we're going to go into the Nils Nielsen coming in and some of the things he's said. I've been really impressed with it in his interviews in the last week or so and what I've read. So, if we build on what we've got, I think we can move forward from this season. It was always going to be transitional, and that's the way it's panned out.
So at this point then, obviously, you spoke about Nils Nielsen. We'll talk about him in a little bit. A week off this weekend for City, as obviously United face Chelsea in the FA Cup final on Sunday. Now, potentially big fixture, big game, big occasion for United, really. Their first FA Cup final in the front of a sold-out Wembley. It's going to go one of either two ways, but in essence, it allows us good time out on the training pitch to prepare for this game. And Paul, looking ahead now to next week and that game at the LSV, how are you feeling? How are you sort of seeing that game as, for City? I know we're saying it's a must win, but essentially it's going to be a really tough test as well to go to the LSV in front of a sold out crowd as well, and get some hopefully points out of that game.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think, just talking, going back to the transition point, I think United had a transition season last season. They fell away towards the end of last season. They were, they were top three and then they fell away. They've learned the lesson from that, and now they're a really solid, very good side. But we're a very good side. At the home derby, there was nothing in it. I think we're a better team than we were when we played at the home derby. I think we're a more settled team. I think they're a more settled team. I think it's going to be a fantastic game of football. I think it's two sides and two managers that go at it. I don't think they're going to set off it. I think it's going to be a full-on, proper, all singing, all dancing, in-your-face derby. And I think we've got every chance of winning it. And I think their fans would say the same. I don't think there's a lot in it. I think they're two really good sides, full of really good players. It's going to be a rocking atmosphere in there. It's always a bit of a bear pit over there. It might be in the middle of nowhere. It might be the most difficult ground to get to for a lot of people, but it's going to be a great atmosphere. So I'm not going to call it, but I think there's not going to be much in it again. I think we've got, as you say, we've got 2 weeks on the training pitch. We'll learn the lessons from the Liverpool game. Those players are still quality players. We're never going to play that badly again, I think, for the rest of the season. So I think it's going to be a fantastic game. And I'm confident we can get at least a draw there, and we could probably edge the win. It will depend, of course, what happens in the FA Cup final. If they win it, they'll be, they'll have that adrenaline and that momentum. If they lose, and I think Chelsea will win that game, by the way, quite comfortably. I think that might take a bit of wind out of their sails. So a lot will depend, I think, on the FA Cup final in terms of how they approach that game and their motivation for that game.
Let's talk about Mark Skinner, Dave, because obviously since coming back to the WSL, since his time in America with Orlando, I think it was July 21, was it? So he's had a few seasons with United and they're obviously making really good progression. I mean, he's been named as manager of the month as well this month for April, and he's made a clear focus on that title challenge. So it is going to be really difficult, and they're going to be up for the challenge as well, and they'll be looking for their first win as well against City in the WSL.
Paul's right. I mean, they were in the mix last season until late on. And fell away, and they have learned from that. They recruited well. I think Letitia is a good buy from. They pick her up from Brighton, was it?
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't watch them every week, so I only see what I see on TV and stuff. So, but they seem to have. He's built a strong squad. The top of the league as we speak today. At the moment, I know Chelsea have games in hand and etc. and what have you, but at the moment, the top of the league, and it's May, so they've had a great season. But I am a strong believer that. Derbies are a different animal. Derbies, you can take current form out the window. Derbies are a very strange thing. Strange things happen on the day, and we go into it probably the first time ever we go into it as an underdog in a way, because we're below them in the league. It's at their ground. They're playing well. I think Paul's right. I think the FA Cup final has an effect on it, because obviously it could affect their mood on the day, whether they've won or lost the week before at Wembley. It's a big thing. We've done both. We've been to Wembley won, and we've been to Wembley and lost, and we know the feelings on both sides. But I do think derbies are strange, and we certainly played well enough in the second half of the derby at the Etihad to show we can get at this United side. They can be got at. Chelsea have beat them twice, so they're not unbeatable, and then we can go there and get a result. But we will have to improve on the recent performance at Liverpool, without a doubt. But I'm sure we will, because there'll be a reaction to that. Gareth will get into the players. Having this week off could end up being a very, very good thing for us, because it gives us 2 weeks to have a proper run at the game. And irrelevant of where we are in the league, the points that we need must win in terms of any chance of top three. You want to win the derby. You don't care if you're 16th in a league and you play your derby. You want to win it. You want the bragging rights. You want to beat your local rivals, and they'll be exactly the same. So I'm looking forward to it. But in terms of Mark Skinner, yeah, he's done a good job without a doubt to keep them, keep the expectation of going all season, and to come into May with a shot at the double. You've got to say, that's a good season for them without a doubt.
And United have shown as well that they know how to sort of dig deep in games and find a way to win. And I think that's something, we've struggled with really this season. But again, in terms of the progression and the way United play, they are a very tough side to beat. Results have showed that this season. In terms of Mark Skinner and his managerial record, it's been one of his best under any club that he's been at. For United, though, in terms of players on the pitch, Paul, who do you look at in terms of the players to watch?
Well, I think it's their fun players. Russo in particular, I think, and Ella Toon, I think, has been on fire this season. Just on the Skinner thing, I think he's a fantastic coach. He's done a great job there. I never rated Casey Stoney. I didn't think she was a great coach. That team seemed to play with fear. They didn't seem a very comfortable side. I think what he's done is he's made that team, like our team, a proper team. They look like a team. They look like a team that are happy together. A team like our team that look like they get on. They're not scared of the manager. They work with the manager. I think he's done a great job there, and that's why they're resilient, because they work for each other. And I think, as Dave says, Laetitia has been a fantastic signing for them. I think she's come on. I wasn't quite sure whether she was quite ready for that level, but she's definitely slotted into that team. And Battle, I think, is a real handful. I think she's a massive handful in any game. So I think there's a lot of players in that team that could cause us damage. The caveat, the thing is, we've got a lot of players in our team that can cause damage as well. Our front three is going to give their defence, and I think an overrated keeper, a lot to think about. So they'll need to be on it. We'll need to be on it. If we're all on it, then that's going to be possibly the game of the season. Because as Dave says, the derby is a weird thing. Even when we were rubbish in the men's game, we still wanted to win that derby, and we still pulled off playing some great United teams, still won some derbies. This is going to be a banging game for me, and I think their players they're playing well, they're playing with confidence, but we're playing well, and with the odd blip, and we should go into that game thinking actually we can match them up, player for player.
We need to stop being so nice. Let's move on.
Well, do want to just on the nice thing, there was a lot of really dodgy refereeing decisions at the weekend, and maybe we should touch at some point on the need for professional panel of referees. But our players were trying to get all of the referee and say, look, if you don't know the drop ball rule, we're going to have to tell you what the drop ball rule is. It's an absolute disgrace that a referee at that level doesn't understand how a drop ball works. I've seen better refereing in my men's walking football league than I saw at the weekend. It was shocking.
It was bad. I mean, there was a number of just baffling decisions, wasn't there? I don't mean to us. I'm talking about the players. The players were baffled.
Well, I think to a degree, I think although Liverpool were trying it on, and there was some things in it that I was uncomfortable with. I think they were a bit confused about it at times as well. And bad refereeing pollutes the game, because the players don't know whether whether they're going to get away with the odd tackle. There was all sorts of weird decisions going on. That's not to say that we lost the game because of bad refereeing. We didn't, but it doesn't help either team work. Get consistent in the game. So I think it's really key at the weekend in the derby is that we have a good referee. That's going to be critical, because if we don't, it could get out of hand quite easily.
We've discussed sort of refereeing at length, throughout the season and seasons before. It just needs to move on. There just needs to be more investment. I mean, just on basic things. I mean, there was even a moment in the game where you could question whether the ball went over the line. Even basic things like goal line technology. At what point are we going to see those introduced to the game? Because they will help and assist the referees as well.
Well, there was an incident in the Leeds game at the weekend where it looked like it gone over the line, and the referee waved it off straight away because his watch didn't bleep. He had goal line technology. Now I understand that having VAR in WSL at the moment is problematic.
Yeah.
But for God's sake, goal line technology is bog standard. The very minimum we should have is goal line technology, and it just bleeps on the referee's watch. That's easy to do, and the fact that we haven't got it.
Do you know what annoys me more than anything? Is that the women's game is used as a guinea pig to trial all, like with the World Cup. VAR was introduced for the first time. The women's game was used as a guinea pig, but when it actually comes down to it, they can't invest or carry that investment to the women's game. It just doesn't make sense. It baffles me that we're basically used and then just sort of left. We want to grow the game. We want it to look professional. We want it to look like elite level, and then all this is still happening. From week to week, just poor decisions. Not all the time, but too often enough.
No, but it's far too often. I mean, like you say, it's not all the time, but it is most weeks. I mean, the one at Arsenal when we were Buddy Shaw was about to knock the ball into an empty net for an equaliser, and then she stops the game for a supposed head injury that wasn't, and gives the drop ball to Arsenal. Just baffling decisions. But it's standard stuff. Paul said the goal line technology is a must because it's the one aspect of the technology argument that pretty much everybody agrees with can't be faulted because it's either over the line or it's not, and it tells you. So it's 100%. And why we've not got it, I don't know, because I presume the cameras are put like along the line, lasers in the goalposts and things, and they could all have it, couldn't they?
Well, exactly, Dave. And at the weekend, that we had an example of that where we got an equaliser later on. I don't think it was over the line, to be honest. I've seen some replays of it, but the technology would have told us immediately.
Either way.
Yeah, it would have bleeped on the referee's watch, and she would have gone, "It's a goal or not." It's not fair on the lines person, And the thing is, you're right, Emma, because what annoys me about things like goal line technology in WSL is, in the Premier League, if we didn't have goal line technology, people would go ballistic and say these are the world's best players. They should expect, given the margins in the game and the pace and speed of the game, that technology should be there. In the WSL, we've got the world's best players as well, or some of the world's best players, and yet they're relying on a lines person or a referee to make a split-second decision. It's not fair. It's unequal. If we want equality in the game, then we should have equal access to basic technology. That is simple. We're not guinea pigs. We are in a league with some of the world's best players where the standard is very high now. We should have basic technology. And if you don't want to do that, then you're actually being a hypocrite and saying you wanted to grow the game. Because people will walk away from the game and say, well, I'm not putting up with that. That's a nonsense.
Let's move on then. News coming out of the club this week. Nils Nielsen has been appointed as Manchester City Women's Director of Football, subject to a work permit approval. What a fantastic addition to bring into this City environment. Someone that's going to really bolster and build on the strategies that we've got in place. And as Dave, you've already said, he's spoken so well in all the media that we've seen this week. Coming from the club, FAWSL Full Time magazine wrote a fantastic article as well. And there's been a lot of positives to come from this appointment. How are you feeling about it, Dave?
Yeah, well, as you say, Emma, when the news broke, the first thing I did was sit and watch the video that the club put out with George from the club interviewing him. And I really like what he said. It was obvious that he's known this post was coming for a while and had been watching the team. From what he said, I loved his philosophy on how they're going to overhaul the whole pathway system, because I think the academy at City does need looking at. So it's not just the first team building through, because if you can start producing your own players, the men's academy at City is outstanding. They've just clinched 3-4 trophies again this season, and that pathway to the first team is there. And if you can build anything like that towards the women's team, besides anything else, it saves you millions of pounds on transfers and everything, and it pays for itself. So the whole pathway that he's going to oversee, I liked the way he was talking about that. In terms of the first team at the moment, I love the way that when he was asked about transfers, he said his first priority was he wanted to keep the world class players we've got at the club now. That was his initial thing, and then add. Now he mentioned he felt that the team needed some experience, maybe adding to it and things like that. He needed a new striker, as you mentioned earlier. He's obviously been looking, knowing this position's coming up, and he's been looking at the team. He's obviously a very knowledgeable football man, first and foremost, and he's obviously a very experienced football man, and I like that. And it basically mirrors the way that the men's side of the club is being run. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to implement the same system on the women's side, I think, because the men's side of it has been extremely successful right the way through to the first team. And I think they're trying to mirror the same system with Nils at the head. Gareth, we call him a manager in this country, but technically he's the head coach. You know, on a match day and training and stuff, and it's the same way Pep is technically. It's run like the Barcelona model and things like that. And I like the sound of it, and I've been really, really impressed. And I would encourage anyone who's not yet sat and watched a couple of interviews with Nils that the club have put out. If you want to see what he's all about, just take 10 minutes to sit and watch those interviews, because they're very enlightening.
He seems really transparent as well, and as you say, you know, he's got a wealth of experience behind him. Head coach of Denmark, Switzerland, women's side. I think he's had some unders experience as well. And obviously he's made that transition as a sort of a director's kind of role. And you know, it is a bit different, but he spoke about wanting to make a difference. It is a different role. You know, his focus isn't that coaching. You know, he can see ways of implementing positive strategies and having consultations and speaking about making a difference. You know, he wants to develop that consistency with some of the young players and just building on from that. And it's all very, very positive. I mean, it has been very, very impressive. And he seems like I said, just like a really honest, transparent guy. And it is really good as well to hear that he's going to be working with like Karen Barsley and she'll have a sort of consultation role working alongside him as well once she's completed her sort of development program that she's going through with the club, Paul. I mean, there's obviously a lot to look forward to in terms of the future and what we're building at City.
This is a fantastic and very clever appointment for two reasons, I think. The first thing, as Dave says, it's about getting the pathway. If you think about this season, we've had 2 or 3 players that have played in the Carabao Cup, junior players, younger players. What's their pathway into the first team? You know, where are they now? They get a lot of run in the Carabao Cup, and then suddenly they disappear. We don't see them again. What is their pathway to the first team and to stay in the first team? How does that mirror Phil Foden and Cole Palmer's path into the first team in the men's game? We don't see that pathway at the moment. So I think he's going to make that pathway much clearer and much stronger. We do need to revamp the academy. We should be getting the best players to come to our academy. In the men's academy, we've got some of the best young players in the world in that academy. We need the same in the women's, so that, as Dave says, we're transitioning, we're saving money, and we're building homegrown talent. The thing that struck me in the interview, and I would echo Dave's encouragement to watch it, is he talked about what sort of players they want. They don't just want gifted players. What sort of player are they? What sort of person are they? And you see that in the men's team set up. They don't just attract quality players. They're interested in what sort of personality they are, what's their background, what's their family life like, what they bring in as an individual. Because you can get 11 gifted individuals on a pitch, but if they all hate each other and they're all idiots, then they won't play very well. So he's really looking at getting technically gifted players, but players that are team players. The likes that you want another Jill Scott, don't you? You want another Steph Horton, that are really good players, but are great individuals at the same time. So I think that's what he's bringing to the club. He's done it at the highest level. He's took Denmark to the European final. He took them against all the odds to the final, and they could have won that, 50-50. He's got all the credentials, and what it does, it allows Gareth to do what he's best at, is coaching. He doesn't have to think about signing players. He'll have that conversation with Nils and others, but ultimately he'll be able to just coach that team and work with the players that are coming in and out. So I think it's a fantastic appointment, and I can't wait to see what happens in the close season and then as the seasons progress. But as Dave rightly says, this is about getting the pathway much clearer. How do we bring those players from the academy into the first team? Because at the moment, it doesn't seem to me to be that clear.
Yeah. I think as well, they've spoke about, Jane's involvement as well, Jane Ludlow, and obviously Gavin Makel's got a huge part in this as well. And we have spoke earlier in the season about Gavin in terms of those players, and obviously they have got some players that they have earmarked for maybe the summer, which is really exciting. It seems that there is a core group of players that they want to build this squad around, and he spoke about the youth within the squad, building on that consistency. It's inevitable that at some point we will lose players, but they've spoke about replacing those players with experienced players, because the experience also plays a really pivotal role, Dave.
Oh, without a doubt, you want the balance, don't you? You want the balance of an experienced professionals in your squad, as well as some exciting young talent, and you can get the mix right. You're on a winner. Undoubtedly, we've got world-class players at our club at the moment, and we want them to stay. Without a doubt, without naming names, we all know who they are. But we've also got, you've also got to mix that with experienced campaigners and types of player. You can't just put 11 superstars in a team and expect them to just gel and win everything. That's not how football works, especially in this modern age. You need to mix and match and certain types of players and everything. Like as Paul says, if you look at the men's team, that's how that works, and this is how it's going to go. And I am really excited to see this team now develop, this squad develop. The pathway system is a big issue in women's football, because there isn't the age levels like in the men's. You've got your school kids stuff, and then you've got under 16s, under 18s, under 21s, right the way through the EDSs and 21s. That doesn't exist in the women's. There's just what they call the academy squad, and it's young girl, 16. Then they need that step between that being 16, 17 and the first team. There's a big gap. It needs bridging, in my opinion. We don't have a reserve league, for instance, stuff. Now, I know there's a lot of things where they loan players out. United have loaned a lot of players out. City have loaned some out, and they go and play the Championship and a bit lower. They have dual contracts and things like that. These are the sort of the aspects of the game that I think someone like Nils will be all too well aware of and will look at, and he'll make decisions on some of our young players. Would a year, say, in the Championship, playing for someone like Blackburn or somebody, would that be the best path for that player? Then they come back with that year's experience of playing first team football, ready to come into our squad, or at least into the thinking of our squad, things like that. And he's the sort of man who can make these decisions for me. That's a good appointment. As I said before, I feel that he's a real football man, and there's a lot of work to do, but I'm excited to see it begin. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time for it to build and to see the fruits of it, because we're talking about young players developing over a number of years here as well as the first team. So it's all good. It's all good, and I'm really, really excited to see what happens.
Yeah, he's obviously a very passionate guy. That's shown through his talk about the development in terms of the women's game, and he's an obviously very driven guy. He's a very cool guy as well. I love his hair. But I mean, he spoke about Manchester City wanting to be pioneering, and the setup, the environment is perfect for him to do that. Saying that he doesn't get much better than here. You have everything you need to be the best you can be, and I know that there are exciting plans to come. We'll continue to grow as a club, and it makes me very excited for what lies ahead in the future. Just hearing that, Paul, in terms of the future and what lies ahead, it is just really exciting.
Yeah, and I think it's in tune with the philosophy of the club in general. You know, and Dave's right. You know, we need to think more about loans. I mean, if you look at the players out on loan this season, Jess Parks had a great season at Everton, got in the England team. Ruby Mason's had a fantastic period out. Cara Keating, you know, had a great time at Coventry. Has come back a much better keeper for it. The standard of play in the championship's much higher now. You know, that's improving year on year. So when we're sending players out on loan from the academy, we should be sending them with the expectation that they're not playing in duff leagues. They're playing a good standard of football that'll improve their game. So I'm very encouraged by what he's saying, but the proof's going to be in the pudding. Are you going to invest in a proper academy setup where you've got apprenticeships or however you bring those young women into the game as full-time young players, like in the EDS? Is that the model we need? Do we need an EDS league like the men's so that each club can actually afford or invest in their young players to play in a reserve side? Because that gap between where the academy is now and where the first team is huge. It's a huge gap to try and close for a young player. So there's a lot we need to think about in how we develop our young talent. But I think he's a man on a mission to do that. It won't always all just be in City's hands, because I think there's some structural games in the WSL and in the women's game in general about how we develop young players. But if we can be the pioneers, as you say, and as he's promising to do, if we can pioneer that and get some new thinking, then we shouldn't just be importing players from abroad all the time. We should be homegrown talent as well. And I think that we just need to close that gap. Thinking about next season, you think about those players that are coming back. Mace, who I think is an outstanding centre half, is going to be a massive, if she comes back next season, which I'm assuming she will, she's going to be great for us. And Jess Park. So we've got two essentially new players coming back. And he's already promising to invest in other players. And they'll be the right sort of players, so they'll fit into the City philosophy, not just as a football philosophy, but what sort of club we want to be, what sort of team do we want to be. You know, I've seen, and I've said it before on this podcast, I think this team is a much happier environment this season for I think a number of reasons, but I think that's what he wants. And he said it in his interview, he wants a happy environment. He wants players to feel happy and valued. And I think that's what we're going to get. And I think that can only make us stronger. And if we get it right, then we're going to be right in for a title challenge next season, because we nearly did it this season. I think with a good close season, I think we're going to be right in the mix for the title.
I hope so. I don't think we're that far off it, Dave. Do you?
Well, Nils himself yesterday in the interview said exactly that, Emma. He doesn't feel City are far off the finished article at the moment for challenging. We're not saying we're going to sweep the board and win everything, but for challenging, which is what the fans, you know, the minimum that everyone expects, really, isn't it, for Manchester City to be up there challenging for trophies. And he said he don't feel far off that. So I think it's definitely possible for next season. A little tweak here and there. And as Paul says, some players coming back, some new players. Inevitably, we'll lose some players as well. Some contracts are up in the summer. Some players might feel it's time for them, better for them personally to move on. That happens. It's football. Unfortunately, last season we lost a lot. Not only did we lose a lot of talent, we also lost a lot of experience. You know, Ellen White retired, Jill Scott retired. Massive experienced players who've been there and done it. Then on top of that, you're losing the talent as footballers as well. So it was a big loss. We had a lot of that to cope with last summer. And hopefully we can stagger contracts in the future over the future years, that we don't lose that much talent in one go again, because it was a mountain to overcome. They've overcome it very well with a staggering start, and it's certainly improved. And that's why I say I think we always knew it was going to be transitional. So yeah, I agree with everything you both said. I think it's great for the club. It sounds a great appointment, and it's exciting times ahead, surely.
Yeah. More incitement coming from the club this week. Two of our players, personal accolades in the fact that Chloe Kelly has been awarded Player of the Month in the WSL for April, and Bunny Shaw has been received Player of the Year for the CONACAF for this season as well. Let's talk about Bunny first, Paul. She's absolutely prolific and just reward in terms of her contributions this season and recognition for the player that she is.
Well, yes, on two levels. She's been recognised both domestically and internationally. She's been on fire for Jamaica this season, like she has been for us. She's led that team. From a team that probably no one really fancied to do anything. She's transformed that team and led it from the front, and she's a real role model for young Jamaican women who want to play football. And I think she's very, very clear about that. It's no accident that Usain Bolt, has recognised, her profile and her ability. Now she's working with Sean Gorter as well. She's only going to get better. I'm delighted for Bunny because I think she's really improved this season as a player. She's not just a prolific goal scorer. She terrorizes defenses now. Her positional sense, her runs, everything she does is of a higher quality. Now she's settled in that team. She just looks like a player that's responding to some really good coaching. I think both domestically with Gareth and at international level as well. We shouldn't take away from the fact that she's been coached, in a national side. So that reward, I think, is totally justified. She's had a fantastic season. The only reason she won't potentially win the Golden Boot is because Rachel Daly, who's yet another world-class player, might just nick it off her. But to score that many goals, this reward, all credit to her. And not only is she a great player, she seems like a really nice and solid person as well, a model professional. So, I'm delighted for her. I couldn't be happier.
Gave a fantastic interview. She's just seemed so humble, and some of the messages that came across from that. I think one of the quotes that I've got written down, the message I have to anybody who has a dream like I did is to keep believing and enjoy the process and the journey. And she said, they asked her where she was going to put the award, and she said, it's going to go somewhere special so that whenever I wake up, I can look at it straight away. I mean, it's amazing. She's such a joy, and she's such a wonderful person. And, she has been an absolute asset to the club since coming in. I know it took her a while to bed in a little bit and make that adjustment in terms of culture and environment. But it seems that she really does like to call Manchester home now.
Yeah, well, that's it. I think the first season, obviously, she was sharing that striking role with Ellen White, and they were in and out of the team together for certain games, and as you say, it took her a year to settle in and get used to the English game as well, which happens. This season, she was the out and out number one striker, and she's done her job. She's put the ball in the net, which is all you can ask for. She's a great person. I've been lucky enough to meet her after games. I've seen they always see her presented with a number of balls for her hat tricks and things like that. And she's, I say, very humble and a fantastic role model. I would, for kids to follow, because she's a great example of someone who's followed the dream and achieved it. And she's a real icon. She's an icon of the modern game now, and scoring goals for fun, as we say.
Yeah, definitely. And Chloe Kelly as well, Paul. She's received a WSL Player of the Month for April, and she's had a great month. 3 assists, 3 goals, and she's been again, contributing so much in terms of her attacking presence in the game. Those crosses. I mean, the delivery. And some of the balls that she's delivered this season have just been pin perfect in terms of, I mean, the one she did in the Liverpool game was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, again, always looking with quality players, particularly young quality players, for progression. She's progressed so much again this season. Her positional play is so much better, she's a much smarter player. As you say, crosses, pinpoint, she dropped that onto Lauren's head. Lauren's great anticipation. Those two play really well together. The fact they both switch from side to side, she's become a real, she's one of those players that terrorizes defenses. She's going at a defender, and you can see defenders thinking, "Oh, I'm really struggling here. I'm really struggling to get near her." Again, a fully well-deserved reward. She had an ACL. She's come back from an ACL that could have defeated her, but she's come back mentally stronger. She had obviously been fantastic for England as well. So again, another award that no one could possibly query or argue against. She has been an outstanding player this month, but I would argue she's been outstanding all season. You know, she's created problems for defenses all season long, and we've seen a progression in her game. Again, I think that's partly due to good coaching at both national and domestic level, but also I think she's the sort of player that listens, the sort of player that thinks, I want to be better, like Bunny. I want to be a better player, and I'm going to work hard at it. And I think we've seen that the fruits of that. She's just been brilliant this season. But I think last month she was head and shoulders above any other player in the league.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, there's been some really good performances, you know, right across the league. So to get that award, I think shows just the level she's playing at just at the moment.
Yeah, and she's so reflective as well in terms of her own personal game, Dave. You know, she spoke about, you know, City being the perfect place for her to continue her development. You know, she's still learning, she's looking to grow, and to keep on improving as well.
Yeah, she's got a great level head, hasn't she, Chloe? I mean, obviously the goal in last year's Euro final lifted her to a different level of fame, a different level of the spotlight on her. Everybody suddenly knew who Chloe Kelly was if they didn't know before, you know. So she's had that to deal with as well and cope with. She's become a lot more in the public eye this season. And as Paul says, the performances have been there all season. What she has done more recently is added more and more goals to her performances as well, which, you know, for a wide player to chip in with the goals is great. Her performances have been at a level that she thoroughly deserved. This is a culmination of those performances. She performed well for England in the Arnold Clark Cup recently as well, scored goals there. Yeah, so I'm really pleased for her. Thoroughly deserved. You've only got to look at the short list of players that were in that month's Player of the Year to see that the talent that she beat to the award. And it's a great credit to her. She should be very proud of it.
That's pretty much it for this week, actually. Obviously, looking ahead to Sunday and Leeds Sports Village, it's a sold-out game. If anybody does have 2 spare tickets that are in the seating bit with the OSC, let me know, because I've got standing tickets and I think it's going to be a disaster. So, yeah, just let me know.
There might be a few tickets knocking about that we'll let people know, because obviously there's this clash issue again with the men's game. The men are at home. If anyone doesn't know, the men are at home to Chelsea that day, and it only finishes half an hour or so before the women kick off, so you can't really do both. It's possibility. I think the men. It's certainly a very important game for the men. So people yet again having to choose which game to go to. I know we've covered this a number of times, but it's a real bugbear for me.
Yeah,
Where you've got to
it
choose.
got moved, didn't it? The time got changed because of it being a TV pick.
Yeah, it got moved to the quarter. It's the 7:15 kickoff. The men kick off at 4:00, so obviously there's not time to get to both. As Paul alluded to earlier, LSV is not an easy place to get in and out of anyway. I'm sure there's United fans who don't like the fact it's being played on Sunday night as well. You know, I know this isn't just a City issue, this clash thing, by the way, because I've spoke to Arsenal fans about this. Chelsea fans have suffered the same. This is right across the women's board. I just feel that these clashes need to be eradicated wherever they can. I know we spoke about this before. I know people are sick of hearing me saying it, but it's still happening. And now it's happening with one of the biggest fixtures in the WSL calendar, the Manchester Derby. And you know, you want to be as many fans there as possible of both teams. You want the atmosphere, you want everything. So you know, it's disappointing, but that could mean there's some tickets floating around of people who now can't go, who bought tickets, who wanted to go. So we'll certainly let anyone know if there's any spares hanging around that we hear of.
I couldn't agree with you more, Dave. I'm sick and tired of hearing senior officials in the game saying we want to go to the women's game, and then not understanding that a lot of people watch both men's and women's football, and a lot of the fans, the hardcore fans, have got season tickets for both, and they are faced with the impossible dilemma of, unless they've got access to a helicopter, they're not going to be able to get from the Etihad to Leeds Sports Village. It's absolutely ridiculous that somebody can't schedule these games in a way that they shouldn't even be on the same day, let alone in the same time frame. If you want to go this game, the women's game, you've got to make it easy. We keep saying it. You've got to make it easy for people to get to it. And this clash in particular is absolutely outrageous, and we need to stop it. Because if we don't stop it, we won't grow the game, and the game will actually start to shrink again. And we need to be really careful about this, because as you say, Dave, it's not just us. You know, it's happening all over the place, and we need to be holding on to the fans that we've got and attracting more fans. The fact that a sold-out derby is being played in the same time frame as a massive game at the Etihad is just not acceptable any longer. And next season, they need to coordinate both fixture lists so that we're not having these stupid clashes.
Yeah, I mean, there may be the odd occasion where it's just not possible to do it. I accept that it's not a one fix for everything, but it needs to be stopped where it can be. For instance, last year I remember the FA Cup semi-finals for the men and the women were on the same day, and you couldn't go to both and things like that. We've had FA Cup finals where the men have been playing at home and the women have been playing at Wembley. Well, you're damaging your own product there, and we've been over this many times. It has to stop, in my opinion, if they want to grow and get. So we want sell-out games. The FA Cup final sold out at Wembley on Sunday. Great, we want that every year. So let's not put massive fences in the way of that happening every year. Let's make it easy for fans to go to these games. This is one of the standout fixtures of the season, the Manchester Derby in the WSL. It should be celebrated. It should be full of both sets of fans, whether it's at LSV, whether it's at the Academy, whether it's at the Etihad, Old Trafford, wherever they play it. You want the maximum amount of people in that ground to celebrate a fantastic fixture that we all look forward to, and now people can't go.
Yeah,
it's just, it's infuriating.
I had a point and it's gone from my head, but I was going to say as well. One thing we've seen this season for the first time, Tottenham Hotspur, they're doing a double header, and we haven't seen that for a while. So it'd be interesting to see the success of that. I think the men's team are playing first and the women's game will follow. But as you say, moving the game, sometimes obviously it's unforeseen and, you have to accept that, it's going to happen. It's part of the game, but they should be doing more in terms of, scheduling an FA to try and eradicate these clashes. My point was, I've remembered, was if you're a men's season ticket holder, and you go to the women's games as well, almost more often than not, your men's season ticket is going to trump your women's season ticket for the sheer cost of what it costs.
Spot on, Emma, yeah. Spot on.
Yeah, season ticket holders. It is a shame. And we need, there needs to be more done in terms of eradicating these clashes, not just for City, but for all oppositions, all clubs, at all levels. It just shouldn't.
What's really infuriating about this is that in the women's game, we it's a smaller league with less games. We go weeks without a game sometimes. Then suddenly we've got 2 games on the same day. It can't be beyond the wit of man or woman or anyone to sit down and go, look, there's only, we've only got 10 teams. They've got a much fuller fixture list. Let's not clash the two. And let's move women's games if necessary to another weekend. So we're not waiting 2 weeks for a game, which drives me mad anyway. We should be playing every weekend or every week. But there's plenty of space in the WSL calendar to move games around. They choose not, and that drives me mad.
Initially, I believe the last day of the WSL was scheduled to all take place the same day as the last day of the Premier League. Now, luckily, someone's seen the sense and moved all the WSL games to the Saturday.
Yeah.
And the Premier League is now on the because you just in the media alone, that would get lost. You want your product to be front and centre. Now, maybe by moving it to a Saturday, we might find that, say, Reading fans, Birmingham fans, whose men's team are in the Championship, they still get clashes. So it's certainly not a one fix problem. There are issues around it because not all.
It can be a logistical nightmare, can't it?
Yeah, it can. I accept that.
I understand the issues there. I understand that, and I'm sure most fans do as well. But in terms of the simple fact is, we need to do better.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. It is about it's a logistical nightmare. But there are people who are employed, like running the railways, who know how to run systems like that and know how to work. Manipulate. Fixture lists and all of that. People, do that all the time, and they need to just be given the go ahead to be cannier at just moving things so that we can avoid these clashes where possible. Yeah, you're right, David. There will be times when it's not possible, but it's happening too often for it not to be an issue.
We've got such a fantastic product. I want it to be front and centre on those big days. I don't want it to be suffering, almost like damaging their own product.
If you think about it, Dave, on the last day that if we had the last day of the WSL and the last day of the Premiership on the same day, both of those leagues could be decided on that day, and probably will be actually. The women's game would get nowhere near the coverage. If it's Arsenal United or Chelsea United, on the last day of the season, either of them could win it. There'd be no publicity for that if it's City winning the title on the last day of the season. We've got to stop that.
They've moved the women's now all to the day before the Saturday, haven't they?
So that's a really clever move. Someone's clocked that and gone, yeah. So now the next stage, clock the fact that you keep making it impossible for fans of both men's and women's to go to games, and also stop putting a match at Arsenal on a 7:45 on a Sunday night, which makes it difficult not just for away fans, but very difficult for away fans, but difficult for home fans as well. Get the timings right. Stop doing these stupid kickoff times, stupid o'clock on a Sunday night. It's not. You got to make this as easy as possible. The men's game has had a century plus of building the products. People aren't too bothered about things. They're committed to the team. We want to attract new blood, new people into the game. If you don't make it easy by making the kickoff times family friendly and accessible and avoiding these clashes, then you're not going to grow the game. And as you said, Dave, and Emma, I'm sure you agree, we've got a fantastic product, but we need to sell it better.
And we've been saying that for a couple of years now. So hopefully someone at some point will start to agree with us. It'd be interesting what you said about Tottenham. I'd be interested to see how that works. The men playing first in the main stadium, followed by a women's game a couple of hours later, isn't it, on the same day?
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see what's because they don't get great crowds at Leyton Orient, Spurs women. No. So it'll be interesting to see. So for them, that's an interesting experiment. I want to see how that works out.
And they've utilised the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for quite a bit this season as well. So it's a good experiment. I'm going to say experiment. And it'd be, as you say, interesting to see what sort of numbers and attendances, in terms of those fans staying on to watch the game.
Do you know the fixtures, Emma? Do you know who they're playing at all?
I don't know. My head.
No.
I think this is the sort of thinking we've got to introduce into the game to try and build a crowd. So you get. I think a lot of people who watch the men's game, if it's made easy for them, will stick around and watch another game. They'll give it a go. I think a lot will do that. I would, if I wasn't committed to the women's game, I'd give it a go. And I think once people see the products, they'll start to think, actually, I quite fancy watching a bit more of this. But again, you've got to make it easy for people.
Yeah, you have. I agree with that. You do need to make it easy.
It's Reading.
The women are playing Reading after the men have played a Premier League game. It'll be interesting to see anyway. Like you say, it's an interesting experiment in that one, just to see what sort of crowds they get for that. Because it's not a big prestigious, it's not like a London derby they're playing there where, that sells itself. It'll be interesting to see. I believe Arsenal have committed to more games at the Emirates next season as well.
Yeah, 5
games.
I think it's 5, and that's worked really well for them. And the derby. I think we were all at the home derby, and there was loads of people around me that had never been to literally never been to a football game, let alone a women's game. You've got to start using the big stadiums because people will come. There was 40-odd thousand on for the derby, and people come because it's. Let's be honest, it's a cheap day out initially, but once they get in there, the key is to make the cheap day out the easy hit into something more regular. Because when people get there, they really enjoy the experience. It's not just a day out with the flags and hot dog and all of that. It's actually watching really good football.
On that, I took my sister came and said we were playing it was the West Ham game, and I was like, I'm not missing another game, and I'd already missed the Chelsea game because I started my new job, and I couldn't they voted me on to to play that game, and because I'd just started, I was too scared to say no. I can't do that day. So you can imagine how that went down. But anyway, my sister was coming up, and I was like, oh, we've got a game. Do you want to come? And she was like, no, I'm not really into women's football. And I was like, come on, just come. If anything, I'll buy you dinner. At best you're gonna get a meal, aren't you? So she loved it. She was like, I can't believe it. It's so different to the men's game. The tactical, they know what they're doing. You can see it's entertaining. She was entertained, and if anything, she enjoyed it and would like to go again. And
there you go.
You try it. I mean, I don't know how much a ticket is. What is it? 8 quid, 6 quid? I don't know what we're selling them for these days. I've never seen the prices, but like you said, you've got an afternoon out, and you might be entertained, you might enjoy it, and then you might want to go back. But
no, it's good value for money. It's well, generally.
It's less than a cinema ticket. That's what you got to think about. You're watching world-class footballers for less than a cinema ticket. A family can go to the ground on a family ticket for less than a single ticket at the Etihad. So you can take your partner and your kids or whoever, whatever combination, to the game for less than going over to the Etihad, and you can get in as well. I
tell you something funny as well that happened the other week. So we was at the game the other day, and I come out and I wanted a drink, and I went to queue up to get a bit of food and a bit of a drink. And one of my next door neighbours, I gave him my season ticket so they could, go to the game. And she came up and she said, oh, thanks for the season ticket. Thanks for your ticket. Let me get you drink. And I was like, so I was queuing up, and then she was like, yeah, I'll buy you a drink. What do you want? And she went to pay for my drink, and I said, and then remembered that they were free. So they're still doing the free drinks.
Oh yeah.
As well, not only are you getting an entertaining day out, of football, good value for money as well, you're also getting free refreshments. I mean, there isn't any other club that does that in the WSL, as far as I know.
That's a lifesaver on a December night when you're playing in the Conti Cup and it's freezing cold, and that's free coffee.
So yeah, thank you both guys for joining me this week. It's been great. I think we've covered quite a lot there. Obviously looking ahead now to the LSV, that derby, that Manchester derby. Before we go, let's just finish up with a quick cheeky prediction. Pog, you can go first. You can have a think.
Oh, you put me on the spot. I'm going to go 2-1 City. 2-1 City, but it could go either way. But I'm gonna put my neck on the line and say 2-1 City.
And I'll say City will make. I think I agree, Paul. I think it will be a blood and thunder derby. I think they'll both go for it. So I think there'll be quite a few goals. I'll go City will make up for it and give us a big end to the season and win 3-2. But I do think it will be an end-to-end game. I can definitely guarantee that.
I've just got 3-2, and I've got that vision of Ellen White in front of the away fans with her arms out. Oh, that was such a moment. I honestly think it's going to be a low scorer. I think it's going to be hard, but I think we may just break that deadlock in the second half a little bit late on, 1-0 to City.
It'll be interesting to see who's right, won't it?
Yeah, very varied predictions there.
It's not often I'm right, so don't put any money on it.
Yeah, very hard, very, very hard. Thank you ever so much, both of you, and I'm sure we'll catch up and recap on the game itself.
Cheers, Emma. See you soon.
Bye.
And that's it for this week's episode of MCW Fancast. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks to Paul and to Dave for joining me on this week's show. We'll be back next week and we'll be recapping on the highly anticipated Manchester derby and previewing Manchester City's final game of the season against Everton at the Academy Stadium. Don't forget that next Sunday's game at the LSV is a sellout, so unfortunately there are no tickets currently available. However, the game is available to watch live on Sky Sports. Kickoff is 6:45. Make sure you're following us on social media to stay up to date. You can find us at MCW Fancast and join the conversation. We'll be back next week. Have a great week, everyone.